So Ken Paxton is the Attorney General of Texas, and now he's running for the U.S. Senate. He's been accused of having an affair with a Christian influencer. And his wife filed for divorce back in July. She said that she does believe in the sanctity of marriage, but she doesn't think that God would want her to stay there, her and her kids in that situation with Ken Paxton. So she's filed for divorce. And I remember a time in American history when this right here, this moment would absolutely sink a person's political career. I'm old enough to remember as a kid seeing Jimmy Swaggart crying on the TV. I don't know if y'all remember that or not. Some of you may remember it. Some of you may know exactly where you were sitting when you seen it. And some of you may be going, who in the hell is Jimmy Swaggart? If you don't know who he is, just Google it. He was Jerry Lee Lewis's cousin. And I do believe that Jerry Lee Lewis probably made it to heaven before he did. But that's another story for another time. Jimmy Swaggart was caught with a prostitute, and it pretty much ended his career. I mean, he went on to be a televangelist. He continued preaching, and there was still people lined up to see him. But as far as being one of, America's front runners, he pretty much fell from grace. And I remember a time in history when an affair like this would absolutely cripple a person's career. But these days, especially the last couple of days, seeing how that Christians, and I put parentheses around that for a reason, Christians, seeing how that they have reacted to the passing of Charlie Kirk has really got me to thinking a whole lot about Christianity and the church that I was brought up in, and just how far it's fallen from what I remember as a kid. Now, I've talked about it before here on the channel, but for those of you that are new, I was removed from Sunday school back when I was a kid, and the preacher said it was because I was asking too many questions and I was confusing the other kids, and he was losing control of his class. Which, looking back at it, I realized just how ridiculous it truly is. But at the time, I remember one of the questions I asked was, okay, because he said to us, Jesus is the only way to heaven. He's the only way you'll get there. You have to go through Jesus Christ. And if you don't accept Jesus Christ, you won't make it into heaven. And I raised my hand when it come question time. And I said, well, what about the Native Americans? They were over here and Jesus was over there, and there weren't telephones and TV, so they didn't know nothing about him. So he said, well, I'm sure they found him. Well, how would they find him if he wasn't here? Well, I'm sure he probably came over here when he was in the tomb, and he was making it up as he went. And then one day I raised my hand and I said, why is Judas considered a traitor when Jesus tells him to do what he's supposed to do? And then pretty soon he, goes and tells the preacher, hey, this kid's disrupting class by asking too many questions. So I was removed from Sunday school. And it wasn't long after that I ended up quitting going to church altogether. And then I went back when I was 19 years old, and I was baptized in a Baptist church by a Baptist minister who now defends Donald Trump wholeheartedly. And so it just caused me to become completely disillusioned with Christianity, seeing people like that I thought had a moral compass, and I thought preached forgiveness for real, and I thought they preached morals and values, and I thought they had principles for real. The older I got, the more that I realized that a lot of my uncles that some people would have considered, questionable people, I'll just put it that way. Some of those people, you can't believe them now. They've been in trouble with the law before. And you can't believe them now. They drink and do drugs on the weekend. You can't believe them. They'd say anything about this man of God. But the older I got, the more I realized that my grandpa that was always drinking Jack Daniels was pretty spot on about a lot of people. And I began to see just how phony and fake that people are. But then when Donald Trump came along, I saw Christianity hijacked like never before. And I ain't defending George W. Bush in no way. I think he's a terrible president. He belongs on the Mount Rushmore of the worst presidents in American history. He'll never get a pass from me. I think Ronald Reagan was worse, but that's for another video. But anyway, when it was Ronald Reagan and the moral majority and even George W. Bush, I could believe that George W. Bush went to church in his life, and I could believe that he was raised in it, and I could believe even Ronald Reagan could have been. Don't know much about Reagan, but I'm just saying I could believe that those men could have been brought up around it. And I do believe that George W. Bush, whatever you want to think about his intelligence, I do believe he's read and studied the Bible, and I think he's smarter than most people give him credit for being. That's about the nicest thing you're ever going to hear me say about the guy. But I could believe that he would be of the Christian faith, even though I completely disagree with his politics and I completely disagree with his take on it. But then Donald Trump came along, and I watched people who I thought were men of God, and I watched people who I thought were decent just embrace the absolute worst of a human being. And that was one of the biggest letdowns of my life, because I walked away from it and I became agnostic, And I went through a phase where I would tell you that I was an atheist, but I didn't really like that word because it just seemed too certain about the whole thing. I liked agnostic because, in other words, I don't know whether there is a God or not. And I tell people that all the time, and I'm not trying to make light or make a joke. I'm just being real with you. When people says, do you believe there's a God? I say, well, do you believe that Morgan Freeman is sitting on your front porch right now? I mean, I highly doubt that Morgan Freeman's on my front porch at the moment. I'm on the back porch. I highly doubt that Morgan Freeman is sitting on my front porch. But if you want to, we can walk around there and check. I mean, he might be. It's possible. Last time I checked, he's alive. I mean, he could have made it here, and he could be sitting on my porch, but it's highly unlikely that Morgan Freeman is on my porch. That's how I feel when it comes to God. But I walked away from it. I became an agnostic, and I still kept an eye, though, on the church that I grew up in. I still kept an eye on friends and family that claimed to be Christian. And I still continued to read and study the Bible. I haven't stopped, actually. As a matter of fact, I still do. I had it out earlier. I had it out reading. Because I was seeing these people put Charlie Kirk's name next to certain Bible verses, and it just did not add up to me. And I never realized just how much that people truly could twist the Word of God to their advantage. I thought that Donald Trump was the one. I thought he was the one that had absolutely bastardized Christianity like no other. But I realized that crown is Charlie Kirk's now. Wholeheartedly. He has surpassed Trump in that department. I've never seen an ideology from a peaceful Middle Eastern Jewish dude who believed in accepting everyone in and welcoming everyone in and feeding everyone and clothing everyone, taking care of everyone, and forgiving everyone. I can't believe that somehow that guy's ideology got hijacked by someone who is completely over here. I mean, I would say Anton LaVey is closer to Jesus Christ than Charlie Kirk. It's that drastic to me. I'm like, are you kidding? Is this the real world? Is this the world we live in? The few people that I kept on my Facebook feed just because I did like them, they were good people. Really? You're going to light a candle for that? And you're going to put his head next to Jesus and say, all because of words? You're really going to compare that? This moment in American history has exposed everyone now to me. It just went ahead and whatever little shred was left, it's gone. And I'll tell you something. I've said so many times here on the channel, and I'm going to own something that I was dead wrong about. I said there'll never be another cult of personality like Donald Trump. Once he's gone, J.D. Vance ain't got that personality. Rubio ain't got that personality. His two goofball kids ain't got that personality. Or two goofball sons. I know he's got three, but I don't really count the youngest one. But anyway, for my own reasons. But anyway, the two goofballs, Don Jr. and Eric, they're like Beavis and Butthead, and that's an insult to them. But you know what I mean? Like, I just never thought there would ever be a cult of personality like Donald Trump. But there clearly was. And they love him more than they did Donald Trump. MAGA loves Charlie Kirk more than they ever loved Donald Trump. I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh, Brando, that's crazy. They love Trump. No, Trump got shot at several times, and they quit talking about it. They didn't threaten a war. They didn't dox people. They didn't get people fired. They didn't go off the rails like they are right now. They didn't go so far. And here's the funny thing. When Stephen Miller's, I done shared a video. I don't want to listen to his voice again, but old Pee Wee German was on there saying how that he was going to come after anybody that insulted Charlie. If you said a bad word about Charlie, by God, we're coming after you. If you said a bad word, Pete Hegseth said to people in the military, if you made fun of him or made light of him, you're going to be fired. Which I didn't have a Pete Hegseth impression. I don't know where I pulled that voice from, but you get my drift. Well, I'll say this much. It would have made more sense. It still would have been wrong, but it would have made more sense if they'd have said that after what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania with Trump. I mean, it would make more sense if they said it about the president, which I know he wasn't president at that particular time, but you get my drift. It would make more sense if they said it about him, but they didn't say it about him. They said it about an influencer, and that's what he was. Glenn Beck says we should call him a civil rights activist, and that's laughable because Charlie Kirk said the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. So on behalf of Charlie, Glenn Beck, I think you really ought to walk that one back because Charlie wasn't for civil rights. So they loved him more than Trump. They really did. They have waged war, and nothing we say, nothing we do, we cannot get them to understand that we don't want a war. We don't, but they clearly do. And they're not going to quit. And every time I read the news, I say to myself, well, do I want to make a video just yet? Because this story's going to change before I can get it uploaded. That's how fast this shit's happening. But all of a sudden, oh, he had a gay roommate. Okay, yeah, and so what? He's still who he is. He still came from the family he came from. He's still another white kid in the gun culture. It doesn't change a damn thing. And if you're Christian, getting back to the actual moral of this video, if you're Christian and you truly do believe in forgiveness, and if Nancy Mace does an about face now and says, hey, I think we should forgive Tyler Robinson, well, then doesn't that forgiveness extend over to the trans community too, or black people or immigrants or anyone else, or the radical left? You ain't going to forgive us? We're unforgivable? We're unredeemable? I guess so. I mean, they said we were the vermin that needed to be rooted out. We were the enemy from within. But I saw that story about Ken Paxton, and I went, well, in any other day and age, that should end his career. But in this day and age, with Christianity twisted as it's gotten now, I don't see how it's going to really hurt him any. And anybody out there that entertains the idea that Charlie Kirk was anything like Jesus Christ, please just don't come anywhere near me. Like, I do not want to entertain, and I'm an agnostic, but maybe I believed in it more than you did. Maybe I believed in it more than you, and maybe that's why I walked away, because I couldn't stand to see it bastardized. Maybe I just couldn't stand to see those words in red pissed on the way you all have. Been thinking about that John Prine song all day. There's a hole in Daddy's arm where all the money goes, and Jesus Christ died for nothing, I suppose. Oh man, if that story was true and he died for this, all I can say is, I'm sorry, man. I never thought I'd say this out loud, but I believe in Jesus more than they do.